Paul Krugman wrote an article defending Hillary Clinton in the New York Times titled, "Hillary Clinton Gets Gored." Gored. So, you have two meanings behind that. That was the whole point. Gored as in like, oh, she's getting Al gored, what happened to him, and gored as in like a literal gore, like a bull fucking goring you. And the whole point of this is about how, oh my goodness, everybody has been so unfair to Hillary, and what they're doing is they're relying on innuendo to try to make her seem corrupt. It's all innuendo, so, you say, hey, there's some questions here. But then you don't go into details about what those questions really are, and you don't give any specific or facts. And then, people just assume Hillary's corrupt, even though there's really no evidence. And what he says is, well, this is what happened against Al Gore, too. Against Al Gore, you had George W. Bush saying preposterous things, but there was still this media narrative of him being a straight shooter and a folksy guy. And Al Gore, who was accurate in what he was saying, he was smeared like, some sort of smarmy liar, basically. Now, was that true in the case of George W. Bush and Al Gore? Well, it was certainly more true in that case because, for example, they said, like, the Republicans made up that he said, oh, I created the internet. Well, that's not the case. He said, very clearly, he stated, no, I voted for the bill that helped funding that eventually led to creating the internet. That's factually correct. But the people on the right just twisted it like, no, he said he literally created the internet. No, he didn't say that. He didn't say that. So is it true that there's always been smear tactics from the right against Democratic candidates? Duh, we see that all the time. I cover that more than anybody else. Virtually every argument coming from the right is just complete and utter horseshit. Now, what's Paul Krugman missing about Hillary Clinton? When people talk about her corruption, Paul, I don't know if you noticed, it's many left-wingers talking about it. So, yes, I grant you, when people on the right argue against Hillary Clinton, now Benghazi, Benghazi, that's stupid and that's not true, and there's been literally 9 investigations that have cleared her, many of them Republican-led, so accept the results of your own investigations, dipshit. So, yeah, that's true, there are just smears and lies and ridiculous things against her because she's a Democrat, and Republicans always go on smear campaigns against Democrats. So I got you on that. But he's trying to muddy the waters and make it seem like any argument ever against Hillary Clinton by anybody is wrong and based on innuendo. And, oh, poor little Hillary didn't do anything wrong, Papa. I swear. No, this is where he loses it and he becomes this smug asshole who's arguing on innuendo as he accuses others of arguing based on innuendo. So, let me give you some of his article. Here's what he says. We have the presumption that anything Hillary Clinton does must be corrupt, most spectacularly illustrated by the increasingly bizarre coverage of the Clinton Foundation. Step back for a moment and think about what that foundation is about. When Bill Clinton left office, he was a popular, globally respected figure. What should he have done with that reputation? Raising large sums for a charity that saves the lives of poor children sounds like a pretty reasonable, virtuous course of action, and the Clinton Foundation is, by all accounts, a big force for good in the world. For example, Charity Watch, an independent watchdog, gives it an A rating, better than the American Red Cross. All right, now let me pause here for just a split second to say, yet again, you're creating a straw man of your opponents because nobody ever said the Clinton Foundation doesn't do some good work. The harshest critics of the Clinton Foundation will admit, yeah, no, they actually do some great work. That's not the problem with it. Why don't you address the actual things people are saying about the problem with it? Okay, now let's continue. He says, now, any operation that raises and spends billions of dollars creates the potential for conflicts of interests. You can imagine the Clintons using the foundation as a slush fund to reward their friends, or alternatively, Mrs. Clinton using her position in public office to reward donors. So it was right and appropriate to investigate the foundation's operations to see if there were any improper quid pro quos. As reporters like to say, the sheer size of the foundation raises questions. But nobody seems willing to accept the answers to those questions, which are very clearly no. Oh, isn't that adorable? So let me get this straight. You go on to, yes, acknowledge the arguments that the intelligent critics are making of the Clinton Foundation. And you say, but there's no evidence, no. There was no quid pro quo. There was no quid pro quo. So understand exactly what he's saying here. What he's saying is, well, I mean, look, sure you can connect dots and you can follow the money and you can see very questionable things that have happened. It's proven that they have happened. But do you have Hillary Clinton on video saying, you give me money, I will do you favors? If you don't have that, well, there's no quid pro quo, so there's nothing to fucking see here. That is literally the same argument made by Republicans in Citizens United. When they go, no, corruption, money in politics, legalized bribery. Do you have a quid pro quo? Is there a quid pro quo? There's not a quid pro quo? Well, then I guess there's no bribery. So in other words, you have ExxonMobil and Chevron and BP and Big Oil give Republican politicians millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. The Republicans come out and say, climate change is a hoax, and here's a $4 billion annual subsidy to Big Oil every year. Well, obviously it'd be every year. It's annual. And Paul Krugman, if he's being consistent, he would have to come out and say, Big Oil influencing politics. I don't see a quid pro quo. Do you have James Inhofe on video saying, you give me money, I will say climate change is a hoax and continue to give you a giant corporate welfare check every year? Do you don't have it on video? There's nothing wrong that happened here, bro. There's nothing wrong that happened here, bro. The same argument every liberal on the planet would make about the Koch brothers, about Sheldon Adelson. Hey, man, Sheldon Adelson donated to all these Republican politicians. Then Republican politicians proposed a bill that bans online gambling. Sheldon Adelson makes all his money from gambling. He owns fucking casinos. He pays the Republicans. They go out there and they're like, it's just a coincidence that we happen to be against online gambling, which that's the biggest competition for Sheldon Adelson, who gives us money. But we're going to, morals and values, and you got to save the kids, protect the kids, whatever. Ban online gambling. Again, if Paul Krugman is being consistent, bribery, corruption, pay to play? No, it's a coincidence that Sheldon Adelson gives them money and then they do his bidding. It's a coincidence that the Koch brothers give them money and then they help out the Koch brothers. What do you mean there's no quid pro quo? Do you have a quid pro quo? Is it on video? Shut the fuck up then. Okay, now, I'm going to give you all of the evidence and the data that he is dismissing when it comes to Hillary Clinton. You ready for this? Sit down and buckle up. We have the International Business Times reports the following. Many major foreign governments that had donated to the Clinton Foundation ended up receiving a boost in arms export authorizations from the Clinton-led State Department. Isn't that a funny coincidence? Many of the donor countries that benefited were those that the State Department criticized on human rights grounds, including Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. Some of the same countries received boosts in arms classified as toxicological agents as they worked to crush pro-democracy protests. More than half the people outside the government who met with Hillary Clinton while she was Secretary of State gave money, either personally or through companies or groups, to the Clinton Foundation. Those 85 donors, which did not include foreign government contributors, gave up to $156 million. An ABC News report on a Clinton Foundation donor showed he was appointed by the State Department to an intelligence advisory panel, even though he had no obvious experience in the field. Clinton Foundation donor Cisco got government contracts approved by the State Department. The Washington Post in 2014 reported that in 2010, Clinton pushed Russia to approve a $3.7 billion purchase from Boeing. 2 months after the deal was solidified, Boeing announced a $900,000 contribution to the Clinton Foundation. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Do you have a quid pro quo? Where's the quid pro quo? The New York Times reported that as Russia's Atomic Energy Agency assumed control of a multinational uranium mining conglomerate, a flow of cash made its way to the Clinton Foundation from investors with a stake in the deal. The sale of the company gave the Russians control of 1/5 of all uranium production capacity in the United States. The paper noted that the Clinton-led State Department was one of the U.S. agencies that signed off on the transaction. A 2016 IBT report found that the State Department approved a permit for a major U.S.-Canadian oil pipeline that environmental groups have criticized. ExxonMobil, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips have delivered between $2.5 million and $3 million to the Clinton Foundation. Again, I'm sure just a wild coincidence. And the list goes on and on here. So another example is she took money from a Colombian oil firm and then flipped her position on the Colombian free trade deal. She helped shield UBS from the IRS and then got hundreds of thousands of dollars from UBS for the Clinton Foundation. They say in that case, it was like an unprecedented move, just this really rare thing of somebody in the State Department going to the IRS and going, but easy there, Tiger, on UBS. I don't know what you're talking about here. Let's calm down a little bit. So, and why did she do that? Well, she ended up getting money for the Clinton Foundation eventually for them. So what Paul Krugman does is he looks at all of this and he goes, do you have it on video where she says, okay, Mr. CEO, you give Bill Clinton money for a speech for the Clinton Foundation, and I will do favors X, Y, and Z for you. You don't have that on videotape, do you? So maybe it's all coincidence. Maybe it's just a coincidence that there was a stalled Saudi Arabian weapons deal, and then Saudi Arabia gave Bill Clinton a tremendous amount of money, and then Hillary Clinton turned around when she was Secretary of State, and then green-lighted that weapons deal and approved it. That's just a coincidence. There's nothing going on here. I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean, man. There's no fucking quid pro quo. Crazy. Why are you arguing with innuendo against Hillary Clinton? It's arguing based off the facts, the data, the evidence, and common sense. Look, here's the thing. If you want to use that argument, Paul Krugman, be fucking consistent. Say, you know what? When the Republicans take money from Sheldon Adelson, when the Republicans take money from the Koch brothers, when the Republicans take money from big oil, when the Republicans take money from Wall Street, and they push for deregulation and more tax cuts for the rich, don't you dare say that there's a connection between the money and the actions. Don't you dare say it, because you don't have a quid pro quo. You're arguing based off innuendo. Now, somehow when it comes to the Republicans, it's obvious that there's corruption, and how stupid do you have to be to deny it? But when it's Queen Hillary Clinton, oh my God, all of the critics of her are so disingenuous and so wrong, and they're liars, and they're arguing based off innuendo, and everybody's being so unfair to Hillary Clinton. That's what's happening. No, you jackass. And let me make this as a final point. People like you actually hurt Hillary Clinton. You do. So you think if I over-defend her, people will go, well, I mean, look, obviously Donald Trump is so bad that I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton. But no, when you over-defend her, you feed the rightful skepticism and paranoia over her and how much of an insider she is and how corrupt she is. If you're going to make any argument in favor of Hillary Clinton, you need to be like Eminem from 8 Mile and say, here's all the things she's done wrong, every area where she's likely to continue to do wrong, and oh yeah, by the way, I still think Trump is worse, and here's why I think Trump is worse. Here's the substantive argument as to how terrible he is. All the facts need to be out there on the table, all the evidence, all the data. You have to be honest about it, but no, you're just a disingenuous hack who's playing for Team Blue, and you decided, I'm going to play defense for Hillary Clinton, even when the arguments used against her in this particular instance are totally legitimate.